Welcome to our ongoing series here at FIDM, The Future of. This week's topic is resale. My name is Tom Henkenius. I'm the director of FIDM's Bachelor in Digital Marketing and Graphic Design. I want to start showing you an op-ed from just this Sunday's New York Times, because I want to prove to you just how timely this topic of resale is. The author charges us with this idea of how to buy nothing new this holiday season. She actually cites three primary reasons this actually could be beneficial. First, maybe you've heard about this global supply chain shortage. She talks about how there may be the shortages of all those it toys that we like to get in the holiday season because of it. Second, she talks about how resale reduces waste. And obviously with the Global Climate Summit going on in Scotland this week, it's been on a lot of our minds. Third, though, and related to the second point, it counters the consumerism marketing messaging that we especially experienced during the holiday season. How many of us have actually gone out on shopping sprees during this time of year only to return with stuff that we never really intended to get, stuff for stuff's sake? It's on that third point that I want to make an interesting exception. I think what you may take away today is that there are marketers with a counter message. Their message is to actually buy used. There are huge companies lined up behind it, and the messaging is hoping to make those companies more than just a couple bucks. One of the companies is a startup called Thredup. You might be familiar with that particular brand and their app. They released research earlier this year projecting sales within the resale and thrift industry of $36 billion this year, more than doubling to $76 billion within the next 4 years. In the startup space, Poshmark posted second quarter sales up 25% from a year ago. Depop, whose sales doubled to $650 million in 2020, was sold to Etsy in June for a mere $1.63 billion. In the brand space, Patagonia, North Face, REI, Levi's, Fabletics, LL Bean, even Gucci and Neiman Marcus are all entering the resale space. And one of the most interesting recent players to enter the space is URBN with Nuuly Thrift. And that's actually probably a pretty good place to pivot to our first guest, Kim Gallagher, who is the Director of Marketing and Customer Success at Nuuly. Nuuly Thrift is Urban's latest app. It was just launched last month in October, stems from the Nuuly Rent app. And just for everybody's clarity, Urban or URBN is a portfolio company. So they have quite a few brands underneath them, Free People, Anthropologie, among 7 different ones. So Kim, I was thinking maybe the most logical place for us to start is where URBN fits in the business of thrift.
Sure. So URBN's actually been in thrift since day one. So the company is 51 years old, and the first store was called the Free People store. And there was a bin where you could bring a pair of jeans, take a pair of jeans. So a very, very small way to start in thrift, but nevertheless, it's been in our roots. And all of the brands, well, most of the brands have some kind of relationship with thrift or secondhand. Urban Outfitters has their Urban Renewal brand where they upcycle products. Free People has a vintage section. So it's not exactly new to the company, but a large investment on the tech side in building out a new platform and a new brand for resale is new. It's actually less than a month old.
And this is not Nuuly's first expression as a brand. You started with Nuuly Rent.
Yes.
So maybe walk us through how you went from rent to thrift, and if that was always the plan, or is this something that the pandemic pushed in front of us, or you just taking advantage of a good trend?
Yeah, well, we started to talk to customers. I think around 5 years ago, we were doing some research about how customers were evolving, not just in the retail space, but really more broadly. And we knew that the sharing economy was really disrupting a lot of industries. And we thought, well, probably retail is coming if it's happening in, auto, and it's happening in hospitality and everywhere else. Why wouldn't it impact retail? So we started to dig a little bit and talk to our customers about their current participation in rental businesses and resale businesses. And we learned that she had a lot of interest, whether she was participating or not at the time. She had interest and she was open and she was growing in her concern about sustainability. And also things that are secondhand are also less expensive, which was also attractive. So we were thinking about where to begin. Do we go the rental path? Do we go the resale path? And ultimately, we decided to start with rent. The market was a little bit more open. There was not a lot of players in the rental market. And we built the Nuuly brand as a subscription rental platform. It's $88 for 6 items a month that you can rent, everything from occasion dresses to coats to casual wear. And so that business launched about 2.5 years ago. And about a year and a half ago, when the pandemic started, there was not a lot of need for short-term rentals. Everyone was home and no one had a lot of occasions coming up. So we knew that resale was something we were interested in. It was on our roadmap, but it wasn't necessarily so soon. But when we looked and we saw that we had a large team of engineers that could either spend, we didn't know how long it would last, but we knew it wasn't going to be super quick. And we thought, do we want them spending their time on building out features for a rent platform? Or should we really start thinking about what's next? And, we're a large company, and should we really take this time to our advantage and try to invest in something new? So we started building out the Thrift Platform right away, and we launched it last month. So really exciting. So it's an iOS app only right now, with hopes to grow that over time.
I teach a class on design thinking. I wish my students were all in attendance right now, because this is basically what we teach them, right? Is to pay attention to the trends that are happening around you, because that is where you pivot toward. Yep. Clearly, that's exactly what you all did. You recognized, oh my goodness, this is going to disrupt our business. This is already in our pathway. We're headed this direction. Let's just ramp it up quicker and take advantage of it. I'm wondering though too, because you mentioned you went into rental first, less crowded market. So this is the more crowded market.
Yeah.
The landscape has more players. Mm-hmm. So you've got to differentiate a bit more. I'm wondering, what were the things that you were thinking about that would allow you guys to differentiate? I know you have like the Nuuly Cash. I'll let you explain that. But you have a few other things to your advantage as well. I wonder if you can talk to.
Sure. So I guess the first thing that was important to us is that we enter it similarly to how we entered the rent market, which was not to limit ourselves to our brands. So when we looked at how other digital businesses, large digital businesses were winning, it was through aggregating as much product as possible. So, and I don't mean retail product. I mean, look at Netflix. It's about getting, as much content as possible. It's not about it being so limited. So we did think briefly about, well, what if this was just something with the Anthropologie brand? But you know what? Customers don't think that way. And you always have to think like a customer. They want access to more. They want it personalized to them, but they don't want to be limited. So with rent, we made sure that we carry our own brands, but we carry hundreds of other brands. And then with thrift, you can buy and sell anything. It doesn't have to be one of our brands. We just thought, as more players enter the space, people don't want to participate with like everything one at a time. It's helpful to have things in one place. So that was one thing. The other thing that was really important is, as a company, we're known for having a creative point of view. And we knew that was important. And it's also not easy in resale. So it's if you've gone to, some resale sites, they can feel a little cluttered or hard. If you don't know exactly what you want, it can be hard to have that sense of discovery that you might be able to get on like a e-commerce website of a brand you love. So we have merchandising talent. Like that's something we're strong in. So we made sure that we had merchandisers sitting side by side with data scientists to really make sure that we're building algorithms to elevate brands and product that we care about. We also used it as an opportunity for business development to go out and source product from premium sellers that we think are great and align with the type of brands we want on our platform. So that's a differentiator. And then the third you mentioned is Nuuly Cash. So when you sell something on our platform, you can take your payout just into your bank account, or you can take it as Nuuly Cash, which is worth 10% more and good to be used across all of our brands or Nuuly Thrift.
I mean, you just need to be a case study for my class. Because again, like speaking to what we teach, this is exactly the kind of thinking that we want people to think about is like you're talking about this aggregating. I just want to bring a point to that. Like you look outside of your vertical, you're looking at Netflix. It's nothing to do with retail, although now they're opening retail stores. So I don't know. But I mean, basically, like you look outside your retail and you see the power of aggregating doesn't matter whether it's our content or another person's content. And then you adopt that into your vertical retail and make it work. So it just this is wise things that you're doing. What I'm curious about though, specifically to what you're saying is that curation piece, the merchandising piece. We teach a lot of classes here at the college. I'm looking at who's attending. Several of our merchandising instructors are in the audience right now. So I'm wondering, how do you make merchandising work? First of all, digitally, second of all, in a resale space?
It's a very different role than merchandising in retail or merchandising in rental. I've learned rental actually has been a little bit more similar, I'd say, than retail. We're not even we are hiring merchandisers, but the role is like this mix between business development and merchandising. Really, we don't even know what to call it, to be honest. We're trying to figure this out as we go. And it's someone that is really data minded and like looking to see trends of what's performing. And if we need to grow a category or grow an attribute. So it's about the data that we put in, which is hard because it's not us putting it in, it's an open marketplace. So anyone can upload anything, but how do they hashtag it? What can we get from like visual AI? And what attributes can we automatically attach to it? And then what kind of assortments can they create? So instead of, creating an assortment of just like dresses, are there creative ways that we can make it assortments to build, like say it's a more like cozy assortment, we bring in attributes across different categories. But the merchandiser, our goal is the merchandiser can select a few things, but then the algorithm can learn from that and pull in other product, because we know as we scale, I mean, the product assortment is just so big, and then each item is a single unit. So you can't really have things being too hand merchandised.
And you also have sort of an entrepreneurial focus to, I'll call it your marketing and influencing efforts.
Yeah.
Maybe explain that for us.
Yeah. So we, one of the ways that, when you're launching a business like this, there's this cold start problem in that you are open for people to sell things or buy things, but there's no product to buy until you have sellers. So one of the things that we came up with to kind of jumpstart was to do a grant program for contractors that we would give seed money to go out and buy product for our platform, or to create, upcycled assortments if that's their thing. And we had people apply. Some of them were interns from URBN. And they've like really, really surprised. I mean, I can't say I'm surprised. They're a very creative bunch, but really gotten some great product on there to launch, and we're excited to grow that.
I would certainly be remiss if we didn't talk about the global supply chain issue. And, a lot of the research that I was reading in the last couple of weeks prepping for today talked about how that's going to play a role in resale and the popularity of resale this holiday season. I'm just wondering how that might play a role. Is this a good opportunity for you all in terms of growth, that it's happening, or are you a little late to the game, or where do you see yourselves and see that play in your startup experience?
I hope it's a great opportunity. I mean, we have great product, and at a time where other people don't or may not have product, in the months ahead. We also, people's closets are where we get our inventory, and they're available still. So we don't have, this is our first year. We're not less than a month old. So it's kind of hard. Like, we don't have a comparison point to last holiday. But yeah, I think I don't think there's any downside to the supply chain problems affecting us.
It's a pretty good bridge to my final question for this moment. What do you see as the future of resale? Subtext being, is this a trend? Is this the new normal? Where are you all at with it?
It's the new normal. We would not have invested. I mean, we have made a big investment in New Leaf. URBN has, and it's because we firmly believe that like this is a change, but it's not a trend. So it is just the way that customers think about their closets. There are some things that you want to buy and own forever. There are some things that you want to buy and own temporarily, or maybe you want to access things that you couldn't afford new. And there's some things that you just want for an occasion or a moment in time, and it makes more sense to rent. And I just think that we're going to see people's closets be considered very differently.
Do you think, I'm going to do a follow-up on my final question. Do you think that people will buy differently? Like when I'm buying new, is this going to change the way I approach the product I'm purchasing?
It already is. I think for Gen Z, I think a lot of people do buy with resale in mind. So they're buying and knowing that, this thing because of this, it's this brand, I know I can get this kind of value if I sell it again. So it's worth paying the premium for.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. We do have Q&A, obviously, at the bottom. Click the button. Everybody knows how to do it. And Kim will be back with us at the end of the hour to answer any questions you want to submit. Thanks so much, Kim. Our second guest is Todd Shiresson. He's Vice President of Able Auction House, third generation at the company. It's been in LA for 105 years. Todd, I'm hoping we can pick up where I left off with Kim and some of those supply chain issues. A friend of mine recently ordered a couch. It's going to take something like 6 months to be delivered. I have to imagine for an auction house that specializes in furniture and home furnishings, that's probably a good thing for you.
It's affected our business positively, I'd say. The amount of people now entering the secondary market space is significantly growing. So our business is benefited by a new customer base coming and shopping in the secondary market as opposed to the retail market. So we have seen a big influx.
Talk to us a little bit about like what you've seen really, I mean, specifically, like in terms of sales and growth, and what are you seeing?
It's very similar to some of Kim's points, actually, which were really interesting. I was listening in. We have the same issue is that people in general want things now. Designers and interior designers have demanding clients in general. They're not willing to wait like your friend might for 6 months for an expensive sofa. They're more inclined to now branch out and find new venues, which one is auction houses. We provide merchandise every week, essentially, for designers and private dealers and buyers to buy. And it forces people to get creative. So designers now will undertake maybe reupholstering, repainting, relacquering expensive furniture pieces to provide that client with something in the immediate future as opposed to that waiting.
I mentioned you're a 105-year-old company, not a 105-year-old person, but that you guys made this, yeah, right. You made this shift to digital thanks to the pandemic. So I wonder if we can, the supply chain issue is more current. Let's go back a year and a half. How did the COVID situation come in and impact you all?
Absolutely. So just a quick rundown. Our business is a true auction. So we are in LA since 1916. And essentially the way our business run was an auctioneer like myself and my colleagues would sit up at a podium and we would sell things to an audience, very similar to how you'd see an auction portrayed on television, maybe. It was a live auction where we'd have hundreds of people in the audience. We're a staple in Los Angeles, so we are very highly attended. And obviously, now that the pandemic happened, of course, there had to be a shift from that. Our business is about turnover. We sell lots of very expensive art, but we also sell furnishings at the same time to get that expensive art. So with COVID, we obviously had to essentially rebrand to an online marketplace and an online auction. We can't have audiences. Times are obviously different. I think Kim's point was right on that we're investing in this new future. And I don't think if we were investing in this, we're not doing it in the hopes to return back to the old way. I think the new way is working. And I think digital is the way people are getting used to buying now. And it's a whole different world where people would have to touch things physically, see things in person. It's not like that anymore. People are taking gambles or buying with pictures, calling, and information. They're more willing to spend money over, I guess, things like the internet as opposed to being local.
I'm wondering how it's actually impacted business as well. Like, have
Mhm.
you seen a lift in sales because now you have a national or an international audience that's able to access online?
Sure. Our increase in sales has been quite significant. So generally, to go to your point, we'll use the sofa example, your friend's example, where on a resale market with an auction, you're going to get about 10 or 20 cents on the dollar of what you spent retail, no different than essentially buying a very expensive car and then going back and selling it a year later. There's going to be quite a big depreciation. With upholstery and furnishings, it's even bigger. It's a big depreciation. With this new market and the supply chain issues that you were alluding to, we are seeing a big uptick. So instead of 10 and 20 cents on the dollar, we're getting 40 and 50 cents on the dollar of retail for expensive sofa, which is a significant increase in value. So a $20,000 sofa would sell in the past for $15,000 or $2,000 is now bringing $8,000. It's a significant increase in money for a seller as well as a buyer.
Do you think that's sustainable? And assuming it's not sustainable, how do you plan for the future?
Sure. I think with auction, and it's about getting you involved in the auction process. So essentially, you may have come to us as an interior designer to buy a couch. You went through the process, you spent a lot of money on a couch. Now I have you in my database. I have you knowing about my business. And now you are going to shop with me for other items to pivot to art, to pivot to silverware, to dining room goods, to fine art and jewelry, for instance. You might see a diamond ring that you might not have thought you needed, but you need. And that's kind of how we get you in the business. It's a pivot from one thing to the next item. And generally, when interior designers and people don't know about us and they find us because of those supply chain issues, they stay with us for a long time or view our auctions every week.
Well, and you've mentioned the interior designers a couple times, so I do have to like point out and thank you because you work with our interior design students and allow them to set up vignettes over there so they get some
experience. It's my favorite thing. I love doing that. So
we're glad you love it.
Yeah,
it's great. It's interesting. But what I'm also interested in is then if your demographic has shifted. I'm just thinking about this, right? Like I think about, eBay auction. I think about gamification of the buying process. Like all these things are sort of buzzy among a Gen Z audience. So have you seen your demographic sort of shift away from those interior designers?
I have the amount of interior designers coming to the table are still about the same, increasing slightly because we're getting more people from international. I get interior designers now from New York, Chicago, Florida Tech, it's all over the country, as opposed to local. But with the private buyers that are coming to the table, there are thousands upon thousands weekly that are viewing our auctions, and they are new people. I would say it's a price point issue. So with items that are a little bit less expensive, people are surprised and younger people are learning to shop through auctions or swap meets to find furniture on the secondary market. So back to your point of they're conscious of buying something and then at least being able to sell it for a similar price. Money is hard to come by as somebody under 35 years old now in today's time. So they want to buy a dining table and at least know when they move apartments, they can sell it and not throw it away. The internet has allowed a younger demographic to participate. In our live auctions, it was every Thursday. It was very hard, obviously, for students and younger people or people with jobs to come and sit into an audience on Thursday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. With the internet, you can be a new attorney or something like that and be in the office and be able to view the auction while it's going on and get a reminder that the piece you love is coming up and be able to bid. It's easier for people to participate. Because of that, it does allow more younger people to come in, but we find the younger people are buying things of lower value, I would say. The $200 to $500 art, the dining sets, the sofas.
Okay.
For the expensive goods, it's a little bit of a different market.
Interesting. But is this you talked about the lifetime value of your customer seems to be pretty committed to you. So if you can get them engaged as a consumer in their early 20s, 30s, do you expect then that this is your customer for the next, 50, 60 years?
I do. At least I would say more for the next 10 years, besides 50 or 60 as the market changes. What it is young people come into this and they are enamored by art. and the world that we are in. We have, when you come into our warehouse, it's 60,000 square feet, and there is beautiful artwork everywhere. There's furniture, there's posters, there's you name it, we have it. Hence why we do the interior design. It allows students to come and see a complete variety of goods and put those ideas to fruition in a vignette. But it's the same respect as when we get young people in, we teach them about art. It's an educating process. Why is this worth money? Why is this not? Why will this hold its value? Why won't this? And that's something that we educate people, and we show them that furniture and artwork, jewelry, it's an investment as well, especially when you're buying it on the secondary market versus the retail market.
It's kind of leads me to a pretty, I think, interesting question, at least for somebody like myself, right? The only auctions I have ever attended are at charity events. So is there something that we would need to know coming to your auctions or participating online? What are the things that the newbie should be aware of before entering the room?
It's an intimidating process at first, I will say. Questions. Ask questions beforehand. Buyer's remorse is never okay in auctions, at any auction. So unfortunately, when you buy something, know that you're stuck with that. It's somebody else's item. So a lot of times we're representing a seller. It's not, we don't own those items. So you need to know going into it that you have to be aware of the size of something. Right now, shipping is the main concern for most people. So that is, if you're buying something in Minnesota, how much is it going to cost to get that French 19th century chair there? And is it going to be the same price that you just spent on the chair? So all of these things in the world is completely changing, and we're trying to catch up with that and limit the amount of problems.
Do you, as you've been pivoting through the pandemic and now these supply chain issues, what are you seeing coming down the line? Are there more changes in your future? Do you feel like this is kind of, you're at the new normal for at least a moment?
I do. We've invested in we have more of a staff, I would say, with photographers, with catalogers. It's a completely different world. We are investing in that as the future. We are streamlining our process of inventorying and the process of getting things in, checking them, and then putting them into the online marketplace. We have to streamline that as we are selling a extreme amount of items, about 2,000 or so goods every month, which means that's 2,000 items online with 20 photos to each item, with full catalog. It's quite a process. We are adapting to that. The more things we can put out there, obviously, the more returns. And we have real life data week to week of what's bringing money and what's not, which is the really interesting thing. Is I can see market trends every other week. It changes, and we can follow those because we have realized results. So we're seeing where to pivot, where we're going to focus. Right now, it's prints and multiples, and it's post-war modern is what people want. So that's where our market is shifting more towards, is going after those Liechtenstein lithographs and Ed Ruscha's and David Hockney's, because that's what the market right now wants. So we pivot in that direction.
You answered my
last
question.
year was Chinese goods, and it was all going after Chinese items. You know,
I was curious what the trends were going to be, since your data is going to tell us. That's good.
Yeah, well, it's sale price. It's how much something goes, and you can see directly what things are selling for and what's doing well and what's not. And we obviously keep an eye on that.
At the top of the hour, we showed the picture of the sales projections in the resale space over the next 4 years. Do you buy that? Like, we're looking at a 2x increase in sales. Do you expect your sales will increase 2x in the next 5 years?
I would hope so. I think we have a very strong business. We have 30 something employees. I mean, we're a big company, so that would be obviously a lovely growth. I think that's a good target. I wish I could hope that in the auction world, that doubling is pretty significant, but we are starting to see a growth in the meantime right now. For that the way to make money in this world is selling expensive items. And so for fine art, you're seeing a big uptick in value right now, and people have money to spend at this time. Wealthy people have money, and the art that was bringing, let's say 50,000 is now bringing 70. So there is an increase in revenue based off that. I would say the projection in my mind would be about a 30% to 50% increase as a rather of a two multiple would be my guess.
Okay. Well, we'll bring you back in 5 years and ask the question again.
Please, I hope so. I hope I can report that you were 100% correct. I would love that. but it
Wasn't
is
me.
been beneficial.
I'm not making these projections. I just
I
report them.
know.
Thanks so much, Todd. Stay with us again. Q&A at the button.
Of course,
bottom.
thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That was super interesting, especially in a space I know very little about. So thank you. Our last guest is Natasha Gabby, and she was working full-time while also being a micro-influencer when she lost her job due to COVID. And so she founded a company, TVI, the Vintage Influence. And where she differs from what we've talked about today is that she's in the repurpose space. And rather than listen to me explain it and all of the things, let me ask you, Natasha, repurposing versus resale, what's the difference?
Yeah, so repurposing would be like modifying or altering the piece before you sell it rather than leaving it as is, I would say.
And just to be clear, you are in the fashion space, so more on that side of things. You have what I think is one of the best founder stories. So tell me, where does TVI come from?
So TVI stands for the Vintage Influence. You are about to see the most embarrassing photos of me from where TVI started. So basically it started as my thrifting blog. I can't believe I let you use these. So it started as my thrifting blog in the 5th grade. I was diagnosed with scoliosis, and so I had to be put in this huge plastic brace 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years. And 5th grade is like our primal time. You start having your crushes. It was very important that I looked cute at school. So I was trying to figure out a way to still be fashionable while sporting this brace. So that's when I started going to thrift stores every day after school. I would find oversized vintage tees and vintage belts and just repurpose these pieces and try and create fashionable outfits that still worked while I was wearing this brace. And so I started the blog to kind of write about what I did to the piece and how I was modernizing it to fit the current trends.
And so just for my clarity, when you started the blog, you called the blog the Vintage Influence.
Yes. Yes.
And that's before influencers were even a thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting how it all worked out.
You've been very on the pulse of things. It's rather impressive.
Maybe.
As I mentioned, you lost your job during COVID. You had basically stepped away from this space completely. You were working, you graduated college, you were out working in the world. So then what makes you then return to Vintage Influence now that you refer to as TVI?
Yes. So basically, through my influencing, I had gotten this collaboration partnership with a jewelry brand to create my own jewelry collection. And I did that, and the sales were shocking to me. I never believed that we could make so many sales. And so I was like, this could really be something. Though I'm a micro influencer, I did have some influence that directly correlated in those sales I was making. So jewelry was never really my thing. I was trying to think of what was my thing that I could turn into a business. And that was always vintage and repurposing. And so I kind of just had that push to start what I always had been wanting to start.
So you ran a test. Walk me through like how you prepped for the test. Like you did some marketing pre-test. What happened there?
So everything was shut down. I just was working with what I had, and I started cutting up and sewing and creating these pieces, and some of them really stuck, and my friends were really interested. So I started sending out these pieces around to get some feedback, and the feedback was all great. So I did a test shoot and kind of prepared for a launch, and it all seemed great. So I started a website and an Instagram, and I started hyping up the launch for about 3 months before actually launching, just to get, some traction going. And then the first drop was about 15 pieces of one-of-a-kind repurposed items. And I sold out within 90 minutes, which I didn't even think anyone really knew about it. So it was really amazing. So that's when I realized, this could actually be a business.
And here we saw the picture of the website, and now we're looking at your Instagram. And so, I mean, basically this was your marketing. You were putting it on Instagram, and then a couple months later you launch with these pieces, sell out in 90 minutes in this drop launch model, which, I mean, we've seen so many people be super successful with. I'm just curious for you now, where does the brand sit? When you're doing that drop model, you got to get things together. You got to have them ready to go. You should be somewhat consistent if you're doing it right with the drops. So where are you at now?
So I would say before the drops were very, random. It was only me doing all the sourcing and the sewing. Thankfully now we've found a seamstress, which we're looking for another one. So if any of you are interested, send me an email. But so now we're doing drops about every month. Hopefully we'll be able to turn that into once a week as we grow.
Is it sustainable for you short-term, long-term to do it this way? Like at a point, do you run out of material from which to grab and create? Plus if you're the only designer, when do you hit a wall of like no more growth?
Yeah, hopefully never.
Good answer.
Yeah, but I haven't been seeing, I do very well in person. We do markets and through Instagram, but online sales have been a bit slower. So definitely the goal would be to grow the traction online. But I'm hoping as, we do the drops more often, we create more of a flow and a momentum, and hopefully that, becomes more sustainable over time.
Not to get too personal with the situation you're in now, but I am curious where you're at in terms of the sustainability of the company. Are you taking a decent salary yet? Are you still in growth mode? Where are you at there?
Yeah, I'm definitely still in growth mode. So it's not super sustainable as my full-time career, which thankfully I have the influencing to fall back on as well right now. But every week, every month, the amount of growth I've been seeing is really amazing. So I think hopefully in the next few months, it'll be able to be something a little bit more sustainable.
When you think about long-term goals, what's on the plans for you? If short-term is the growing, just to be clear, if I'm reading you right, your short-term goal is more sales online to support. And then long-term, what would the hope be?
Long-term would definitely be a brick and mortar store, hopefully a few of them. Yeah.
All with unique pieces.
Yes. Everything's one of a kind. So all one of one.
I am fascinated by this. I'm curious too by your work as a micro influencer, because we've seen a lot of influencers parlay their fame into like reality TV. We see some really interesting collabs with fashion and beauty brands. You're using yours though to create an entire brand of your own that you started in the 5th grade. PS, by the way. Do you plan to continue that micro influencing work into the future? What's it serving as for you now?
It's been hard to balance both. I've definitely put more of my focus on my own brand right now rather than my personal brand, but it's definitely been helpful. I think the micro influencer part of it that's where I got most of my customers and like my client base. And so I think I'll definitely try and continue. I think the difference between some influencers and others is you're doing business for other companies and you're doing that for years. Whereas I realized it's smarter to just start your own company and do that work for yourself and influence for your own brand, because obviously long-term, that's what's going to really be helpful to you rather than other people and their businesses.
I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, we did a panel on the future of influencers and the research at the time and the folks that we spoke with as well. The key learning was the micro influencer really is the one with the power. You drive the consumer to actually spend the money. Do you feel like you're kind of proof of that? It sounds to me like you are, but I'm just curious from your point of view, thinking about what happened with the jewelry brand, watching what's happening with your own brand. Do you feel like the power really is in the micro influencer?
Yeah, I would hope so. I think also now seeing it from a brand side, when I've seen micro influencers post wearing our stuff, and I've seen influencers with millions post, and the difference is so interesting to see. I think micro influencers really do just have that loyal. It's a smaller following, but they really are so loyal. You'll post about something and they will run and to buy it. Whereas I think influencers with a bigger following, you're not seeing as many sales like directly correlated there. So it was interesting to see it from an influencer standpoint and then now on the brand side.
Fascinating. Okay, last question, same one I've asked everybody. What do you see the future of this space going to? So specifically for you, this repurposing, what is the future for repurposing?
I think not as many people are doing repurposing right now, and I think it's definitely growing. There was a gap in the market when I started it, and I've already seen that being done so much more. I think it's a big future. I think that's what's going to be the main majority of shopping right now is going to be, repurposing and secondhand and all that. I think that's what the main market is going to be.
It's interesting space. Let me invite everybody to turn their cameras back on. We do have one question, and please feel free to submit more. The first question comes from Sydney, who's asking, what tips would you have for anyone looking to launch a venture in the resale market? Kim, we haven't heard from you in a minute, so I'll let you go first on this one. Any tips for somebody looking to jump into this space, aside from obviously using Newly, right?
Well, I guess, understand what your own brand is as a seller and figure out which platform is best for you. I think a lot of people also try multiple, and there's no reason not to kind of see which one has your target customer, but ultimately you're trying to find the one where your target customer is the buyer, and where the eyeballs are. So do research up front, and know that I think some platforms have varying degrees of the different commission rates and payout. You always have to balance out the commission with the question of, are you actually going to sell something? There's some platforms where you might make, you might give up less commission, but you don't make sales, so you don't make money. So it's all figuring out how to balance that.
Todd, I know it's slightly different space that you're in, but I'm wondering for you, what tips would you have somebody that's thinking about getting into the resale market?
Sure. I think that from the furniture or the fine art side, it's education. You have to be educated in this world. You've got to study. You've got to go and see what real prices are bringing, what things. The only way to really learn is experience. You can read art history books all day long, but the chance that you're going to come across a Cezanne and a Van Gogh is not in real world, maybe in a museum, but other artists and other things that you've got to see it. You've got to know what people want. And then also a passion. I think with interior design, especially with a resale, especially with brick and mortar, it helps when you go into a store and the owner is educated. He has stories to tell you about the pieces. A lot of it is salesmanship as well. And knowing your audience, which was said, and putting in the work. I don't think there is a way around that, unfortunately.
Natasha, for repurposing, what's the best tips to put in to get started? Do we need to start in the 5th grade? Or are we too late if we didn't?
No, I think you're okay if you start now. But I would say definitely just figuring out your niche and what makes you different, and focusing on that, honing in on that, and just the second thing would just be starting. Just the faster you start, the faster you'll succeed. So,
Kim, a question came in the chat. Love to hear the transition in regards to rebranding, where it looks like Instagram is the leading source of awareness. The website, the UX, UI does not have this as the forefront of the homepage and the messaging. I'm not sure I fully get the question, but I'm thinking it's about, is it maybe the transition from rental to thrift?
I can go with that.
Yeah, let's take that approach.
So that was when we decided to launch a resale business, we really thought about, should this be its own brand? Should we expand the Newly brand? And ultimately we decided that it was all laddering up to the same, circular fashion concept. And it really made sense that it should all live under one brand umbrella. So if you go to newly.com, there's options to go to rent or thrift. Ultimately, the brand's mission is all about, welcoming the customer wherever she is on her journey of sustainability, and also allowing her to access fashion in a way that's more economical and hopefully better for the planet too. But we felt like both really fit under that. And I mean, if you go to Newly on Instagram, that's the brand. It houses both rent and thrift. So hopefully that answers the question.
Well, and I think just for clarity, you still are operating both Newly Thrift and Newly Rent.
Yes. Rent is alive and well, and Thrift is just our newest business.
I wonder, Kim, you sort of brought this up when we were chatting earlier, and I was curious to get Todd's thoughts on it, and Natasha's as well, actually. When you think about this audience now going and maybe buying something that before maybe they would have only spent, a fraction of the amount, but now I'm going to spend an extra, you said 10 cents on the dollar, Todd, maybe I spend an extra 15 cents on the dollar because I know I'm going to get that in the return on the back. Is that a smart move for consumers? Like, should I be thinking that when I go in?
I think the adage of it takes money to make money sort of applies, unfortunately. Right now, people are, in the past, I'd say 8 months ago, they were irritated. So if you're a normal buyer and you're used to paying $500 something that costs you $1,500 now, it's a hard pill to swallow. I think what the designers and dealers and other people are realizing is they can make more on their end. So it's benefiting everyone along the way. So yes, people that are stepping up right now and spending money, and they have the clientele, are doing very well. And people on that side that buy from me are in turn benefiting from the supply issues and just people staying home and wanting to redecorate, frankly. And people are still buying homes. People need to fill up and get furniture constantly. It's just the way it works. So they're used to it now. It hurt them, I'd say 8 months. Now the new norm, this is kind of rolling into what the new normal is.
And I also am finding, it relates to so many of the issues we've confronted in the pandemic. We just don't enjoy going out to dinner as much as we used to. There's less staff. And so the experience of dining out is not what it was pre-pandemic. And so we're enjoying having people come over. In turn, we need more serving pieces and we need extra chairs. And
we couldn't sell China for the life of us years ago. When I say sell, meaning it was going for nothing. No one's buying fine China. Now, for some reason, the market, just like you're explaining, is people want that formal dining set again. They're having people over. They're excited to do Thanksgiving and Christmas or Hanukkah dinners. And so it's the same. It's in turn, now you're seeing a big market in dinnerware, which isn't something we would sell. That's now bringing thousands of dollars for sets that were bringing hundreds.
We just pulled out grandma's dinnerware last weekend for Thanksgiving.
Exactly. And younger people are more interested in returning to some traditions that their parents or the baby boomer generation older were not as interested to do.
Natasha, I'm curious, when you think about the product that you get that is the source material for what you repurpose, like what is that process like for you? How do you go about it?
I try and see, I kind of focus on the foundation of the piece and see if it'll hold up, since, I'm hoping that people will continue to be wearing these pieces for a long time. So that's the first thing I look at, is like, the material and how it feels, and just kind of even going back to like reselling. Like, I am reselling a lot of my old pieces, and I think that's what I think about now when I purchase something new or used. And so I think just thinking about if it'll hold up is the most important part of my sourcing process.
Kim, what Natasha does, would that be part of what you're hoping to bring to your platform? More of the repurposing, not just resale?
Yeah, we actually have that on our platform. So there's people that are upcycling pieces. We actually do it for rent too. So for example, we have someone who was a Newly Rent subscriber who now takes all of our old white coveralls, and she does like really cool dye techniques, and then we rent them out. So we have several collaborations like that. One notable one launching soon. So yeah, we do that in rent and then also in the thrift business.
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Kim, have you seen what percentage, or has there been a change in the male to female ratio on your site with the pandemic?
Well, so I should have said this. Newly Rent is only women's. So okay. I think that there has been a change since we launched Newly Thrift, which is for men and women. I'm hopeful that someday Newly Rent can be for men too. We just knew the market wasn't as big. There really isn't. I mean, there's really nothing, there's no rental, there's very few rental programs for men. I should say there are some,
Sure.
but hopefully someday. Yeah, but it has changed recently.
And in the rent space, or in the thrift space rather, are you seeing lift in men participating?
Yeah, but we're just under a month old. So yeah, yes, but
Todd, can we push the question?
Yeah. I'll ask
Push the
later.
question back to you. Like, do you all see, I mean, I've never even really thought about like in the auction space.
I think it's pretty non-specific at all. All walks of life in every aspect buy and shop. So I can't say that it's more a percentage of one than the other. Plus, I don't always know who my customer is buying on the other end either. They're in a different country a lot of the time.
When I was asking you all earlier, and this will be my last question unless anything else pops up in the Q&A, but when I was asking you earlier about the future of the space, I was thinking maybe 5-ish years out. I wonder if you could take us maybe 10 years out in your perfect world, thinking about all the things, right? Because by then the supply chain issues are behind us. Hopefully, God willing, COVID is way behind us. All of the things are behind us and we're moving into a more sustainable space, looking at what's coming out of COP26 right now. There's some pretty significant goals that we're supposed to have met globally by 2031. So where do you see your space and the place you play in that space? Kim, I wonder if you could take that one first.
Sure. So what I think might happen, and I hope happens, is that the emergence of more resale businesses put pressure on, retailers to create clothes that last, because those are the clothes that are going to do the best in the secondhand market, right? Like those people are going to start to favor brands that they know last longer and be more likely to buy them new. Mm-hmm. So I think over the next 10 years, we'll see like a movement away from what kind of like happened in fast fashion with things being made like really fast and not high quality, and maybe more pressure on things that are more durable.
Todd, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Same. I mean, we are in the business of showing people why things like that IKEA furniture or other mass-produced made in China furniture as well falls apart and doesn't last. And I would agree with Kim's point that people before only looked at the bottom line, different generations. Now younger people, that last, and it matters to them how it's made, and they're willing to oddly spend a little bit more money and care about the make and the quality of a product. Is it sturdy versus is it going to be thrown out at the end of its life after you move after a year? Especially the younger people that are moving and not staying in the same location for more than a year or two at times. They want to take it with them and make it last.
One of our viewers points out that IKEA now has a buyback resale thing going as well. I think theirs is mostly buyback though. Is it resale also? Honestly, I'm not 100% tapped in.
Me, I have no idea. If it made it that far to get it to the resale, I'd be impressed. To be honest, I mean, if you've ever assembled or disassembled it, good luck.
I have. I still have the pieces left over from the assembly process. There's plenty of them sitting in my home. Natasha, how about you? 10 years out, where is your space, the upcycling, repurposing space?
I agree with what everyone said today. I think same thing. It's like people are willing to spend more, especially younger people I'm noticing a big change. My friends and the people younger than me are willing to spend more on something that'll last, and hopefully that will translate in the future. And fast fashion will hopefully be gone altogether. But I think people will really be more devoted to these secondhand brands and upcycled brands, because I think my generation and the younger generations are more interested in, I don't know, saving our future than the older generations are. So hopefully that'll translate into secondhand use more.
I really can't thank you all enough. As I mentioned to you guys before we hit the live button, I just find this space so fascinating. I knew so little before going into it and have learned so much and talking to you and researching to prep to talk to you all. So thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing and for taking this hour out to spend it with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Our pleasure. I want to thank everybody else for watching as well. That's it for us for 2021. We're actually taking the month of December off. We will be back in January. We're calling our January episode The Future of 2022. We hope to talk about TikTok, influencers, so much more. We have some really great panelists lined up who haven't fully committed yet, so I don't want to mention any names at this point, but I think it's going to be a really great panel to kick off the new year. That is coming up on, I don't have my calendar in front of me and I didn't put it in my notes. I think it's the second Tuesday in January. Keep that in mind. We'll send you a link in the next day or so to a recording of today's event. There will also be a link to RSVP to that one in January. It will have the date, I promise, when we send it out. And on Thursdays, I want to invite you to join Mimi, Sue, and I as we discuss the week's latest trends in retail, design, tech. We have an office hour, we call it. It streams live on Clubhouse, and we love it when you join us and participate in the conversations like so many of you have had and have done.